Can you feel it coming? Something's waking up inside. Hearts ablaze, we're standing tall, breaking chains of yesterday. Did America finds its voice? In the darkness we make choice. Truth and healing lead the way. Hearts ablaze, we're here to stay. Rise from ashes, come what may. We're finding hope in disarray.
Today we're speaking with Cydian Kauffman. He is one of the owners of Pure Water Northwest. Cydian, could you please introduce yourself? Let people know just a little more about you, please.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me on. I'm one of the owners of Pure Water Northwest. The company was started a little over a decade ago to try and handle water, basically by helping people with drinking water, both in their homes and their businesses. But the goal of the company is to try and do it through kind of a water science lens rather than a product lens. So we try to do a lot of testing first. And I joined the company 6 years ago, knowing absolutely nothing about water science, water treatment, or anything. And I have learned a lot. I have become something of an expert in it. So I just like to get on, podcasts every once in a while, talk about water quality, or whatever you want to talk about in relation to that. But yeah, that's what I'm doing. That's why I'm here.
I'll tell you, water is one of the most important things, if not the most important things of our life. And we are oblivious to it. It's all around us and it covers most of the earth. But yet we are so retarded, if you will, when it comes to water. And the Clean Water Act, it really doesn't do much for us if you really look deep into it, but they try to safeguard our water, and there's a lot to do with water. Let's start off with what's the main issue with water contaminants?
Well, the main issue with water contaminants is that they're invisible. I mean, what you just described, that water is kind of everywhere. It being ubiquitous, so to speak, it being in everybody's lives. It would be like if someone said that the air you're breathing is bad. If the air you're breathing is bad, then like, what are we going to do about that? Water's a little easier than if the air you were breathing is bad, though. You actually make a choice to drink water. And so there are a lot of ways you can actually filter it. It is a little easier to confront than air, but not that much easier. And so the fact that many contaminants are completely odorless, tasteless, you can't see it, that makes it difficult for people to wrap their head around the idea that some of the water they're drinking might have a problem.
It's killed so many people through history, simple cholera and not boiling the contaminants out. So, what is the best system for us to use to get the simple organics out of our water?
Well, I mean, if you want one system, that would always be reverse osmosis. We're not a big proponent of just throwing a system at something. It is okay to do if you really want to get a reverse osmosis system, and then you're pretty safe with water. But the better thing to do is identify what's in your water by doing testing. For example, most reverse osmosis systems are only 50% effective against arsenic 5. Arsenic 3. And there's more than one form of arsenic, and a form of arsenic, and arsenic is everywhere. a form of arsenic will only be 50% removed by reverse osmosis. So you would need a supplementary system to that, something that has like a nano titanium oxide or bay oxide or something called SVG2, basically other forms of media that are specialized in reducing arsenic at that level, or you have to oxidize the arsenic. So basically, it's fine if you just want to throw a system at it, get a reverse osmosis. But if you really want to be sure what's in your water, you want to tailor it, you should get a test and talk to an expert.
So you can actually tailor your filtration by the different chemicals that you add, and it will suit your system a lot better. That's interesting.
It'll last longer. Yep. And it will avoid problems. Actually, a main source of people's problems they're not aware of is when they decide to throw a softener at their well water, for example. And if you've got well water and you've got arsenic or high levels of cadmium or chromium or some other contaminants in the well water, and all you're doing is throwing cation resin at it, so you're just trying to attract that positively charged ion, that is going to that is going to cause sometimes those other ions to bind to it or get stuck in it. And those will release because they're not the right charge, but they will still get stuck. So you can get arsenic, for example, binding up in that media and just holding, and then suddenly releasing. It's called contaminant dumping. So if you don't actually test your water first, you can actually make your situation worse by trying to treat the water.
That's interesting. So I'm a homeowner up here in the Cascades, and I have water issues. You know, it's a community well that we use here. So I've been thinking about implementing a system to do something, but I'm really kind of ignorant when it comes to that. So I went out and I bought a zero water filtration and put it in the refrigerator, and that's what we kind of use. Is that getting what I need out of my water, or should I actually get a personalized test instead of just relying on the test from my water provider?
Well, because you're talking to me, maybe I can help you through it without you having to do a personalized test. So, but most people, yeah, they should do a personalized test. So let me ask you, on your community well, are they chlorinating it?
Yes.
Okay, so that means they're oxidizing the arsenic. So if they're chlorinating it already, they're already flipping that valent state of that arsenic to a much easier state to remove. That zero filter, those do deionization. So I have two things to say about them. One, they're fantastic for the period of time they work for because they're deionizing your water. Like, you can't beat deionization, really. But they don't backwash. You can get deionizing filters that backwash. They won't do full deionization, but you can get them that do sufficient deionization, and then they backwash, which means they self-clean. That zero filter needs to be replaced. But how do you know when it needs to be replaced? All you're doing is doing TDS testing. That means that for all we know, that filter is binding with and getting filled with the much more easy to grab contaminants, and then allowing through at the tail end of the filtration lifetime, allowing through some of the harder to grab contaminants, which can be bad for you, like arsenic is harder to grab. So it is not a perfect solution. And as long as you're actually doing those tests, the TDS tests, and then really keeping up on the filter, it's probably okay. But those filters can go bad pretty fast if your well water is bad. So it is definitely not a solution for everyone. We've had people who have well water that's so bad that those zero filters would go bad in 3 or 4 days. So
So talk to me a little bit about these systems. Can I get like an under sink system that will do that process instead of this big tank that I have to set in the back room someplace and fill it with salt and chemicals?
well, you can do reverse osmosis under your sink, which will generally do more and last longer than that zero filter. If you do them both together, like you're doing more than a lab would do. So you're getting fantastic water if you do them both together. The but it's also maybe a little bit of overkill. It does depend on your water though. So to answer your question with any any accuracy, I would have to see your water tests. But you can't do self backwashing filters without having a whole house system. Those tall tanks that are about as tall as a person, if you want to have them self clean, you have to get those. You're not getting a self cleaning system that fits under the sink. So for those, you're always changing filters.
So with the reverse osmosis system, is there a filter that you replace in those, or how does that actually work?
Yeah, RO requires membrane replacement, and there's also some filters that are there to protect the membrane. But the membrane, that little canister that's usually about this big that goes under your sink inside the reverse osmosis, that thing is amazing. It does the work to remove salts. It doesn't do anything with ions. It's removing salts and inorganics and some organics because it is physical filtration, but also it does essentially reverse what reverse osmosis basically is that natural osmotic tendency, which is the tendency for things to create balance. So you'll have one side of something here that's contaminated, and through osmosis, it will contaminate the other side. We are doing reverse osmosis by applying pressure and then putting basically a screen between the two things that will push this way, but won't allow it to travel back this way. And then you drink from this side. You drink from the clean water side of it. That's basically all reverse osmosis is doing. But which is amazing. That's an amazing method of treatment, and it allows naval vessels at the sea to drink seawater rather than having to store water. So I mean that process is incredibly powerful, and reverse osmosis is incredibly effective. And it doesn't make your water unhealthy like some people think either.
What about UV filtration, ultraviolet light? Is that effective, and is it worth the cost of that equipment?
Yeah, for bacteria, it has shown to be pretty effective. It is the least effective of all of the various ways of killing bacteria, but it is effective. You would call ozone more effective, chlorine more effective, but UV is very effective, yes, at bacteria only.
Yeah, we've used chlorine for years to, help reduce the health risk of water. But there's a deal with chlorine. It's been years since I've been into this, but it's residual, and that residual chlorine can be bad for us. Can you talk to us about that?
Well, for sure, yeah. I mean, in high doses, it's cancer causing. Chlorine was used in World War II to kill people. I mean, it's in its basic form, it's a gas, and it will absolutely kill a person at high enough doses. The chlorine byproducts that are created by the action of chlorinating and decontamination, creates trihalomethanes, bromodichloroacetic acids, haloacetic acids, all of those various chlorine byproducts. Chloroform, like chloroform, is one of the byproducts of chlorine. And the thing that you need to remember is everything about what will hurt your body is about dosage. So there's two things that I need people to I always am telling people two things, and these are contrasting realities. One is the dose is what kills a person, not the item, it's the dose. You drink too much pure water, you die. Like I think 9 liters or something will kill a person. So it's how much. It's just how much. But then again, anything that you aren't filtering ahead, your body is the filter. So if you don't filter out the chlorine and chlorine byproducts, which are needed, you have to have that or you're going to die from some bacteria or amoeba or protozoa or some sort of cyst or parasite will kill you for sure at some point. Especially with the water the way it is now, the originating water the way it is now, before it is treated, that will kill you. But I mean, in most sources, I shouldn't say that outright. There are some sources that are actually very pure still, but in most places right now, yeah. And then anything that is then a byproduct after that, the chlorine residual, the chlorine byproducts, all of that, those are not in high doses enough to kill most people or hurt most people, but they do build up. They can build up over time. And like I said, if you aren't filtering it, your body's the filter. So it is good to get some carbon to get rid of that chlorine stuff.
So that is the answer, is an activated chlorine?
Activated carbon to get rid of that stuff, yeah.
Or charcoal. Sorry. So I was reading your bio when it came over, and it talks about water and gender equality, the untold story, how clean water transforms women's lives, and why it's one of the biggest human rights issues nobody talks about. I need to know more about this because I've never heard of this.
Yeah. Well, let me put it to you this way. In a country where you don't have just water flowing through all the pipes, where are you getting the water from? You're going to a borehole if you're lucky enough to have one, like a well, or you're getting it from puddles. And if you have no access to water, the only way you're getting it is by walking for many, many, many miles to get the water. Who is doing that? Women and children. That's who's doing it. And this is many, 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 many locations where there are thousands of people who are huddled together around an area that has, some access to water part of the year. And then another part of the year, there's no access to water. And during that time, there's 4 to 5 hours per day that all the women and children are just walking to get that water, which means those women cannot be educated. They cannot get a job. They have to rely on a man to support them. And that man then has all the power. So if they're lucky, they've got a good one. And if they're not, they have to suffer whatever is happening. So in those areas, the topic of equal rights cannot even begin. You can't even start that topic. You could not say, I want equal rights, because you have no leverage whatsoever. You have no choice to just say, okay, I'm just going to go I'm going to go do my own thing. It's just not really possible. So it is a huge gender equality issue. And those companies like Ryan's Wells and other companies who are going around drilling wells, and then they either figure out the water chemistry themselves or they contact a company like ours. We've helped with some of those projects, advising on them, and making sure the water that comes out of the ground is decent enough that they're not going to die from it. And then suddenly the entire social structure of the area changes. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, a lot of people don't even think about that. And we've heard about, the African and, these dry places being without, but yet we overlook those problems in our world. So how how can we actually get these people to a better place in life? Is it by drilling wells or is it by moving them to a more arid place? Or
So yeah, there's two basic solutions. One is you get them a well. If you drill deep enough, in most places you'll find water. Not all places, but most places, if you drill deep enough, you'll find water. So that is one option. And then, yeah, moving them is maybe an option. I think if they could move, they would, though. So sometimes what is actually happening is that people are already moved and the infrastructure in the place is not worked on by the local government. So even in those places, they are still having to travel for hours to get water. And those places, what can actually help is access to testing, as strange as this sounds. If those places who actually have a governance take a test and say, this is what we're drinking, and they walk it to their not their municipality, they're not going to necessarily have one, but their government, their local representative, and say, look, this is our water. These are way beyond the health level. This is what's causing our children to die. This is what's causing us to have malnutrition, stunted growth, to have developmental issues in our society. It changes our entire lives. And this is the proof that can actually help a little. I mean, it depends on whether the government's going to listen, but it can actually help some. So those two things, I would say, access to testing and then the ability to actually get wells drilled, which means you have to partner with a company that does that as their mission, like Ryan's Wells I mentioned before, and there's some other companies as well that do that.
yeah. So I've seen some companies out and they're doing testing with various systems that pull water out of the air. And this seems like it's a possible way of supplementing water supply, but I don't see that it would actually give you enough water to live off of because we actually consume so much water.
Yeah. So you bring up a really good point. Those are brand new. Like, I know they've been around for a long time, but the ones that can actually work efficiently enough that it could make sense, those are new. To get those to work, you'd have to, currently to sustain one person requires a size that's about, I don't know, 8 people in space. So they take up the space of 8 people roughly to sustain one person. And I don't remember the exact power consumption, but you would need solar or solar plus wind to capture it in those areas. So there's a lot of cost, but it is actually a reasonable possible solution in the future for some people. It is getting more efficient and it is getting a little bit more the cost of solar is getting better. So yeah, I could see this actually being, in the not too distant future, this being a third alternative for some of those areas.
Yeah, very interesting. So you also talk about structured water and hydrogenated water. What is this all about?
Well, I just bring that up because I know a lot of people like to talk about that right now. There's a lot of topics people like to like to go on and on about water, and sometimes they're maybe not the most scientifically like proven things. So structured water is this idea that water can have a structure, meaning the bonds in it will, instead of being random, settle into a structured state. There was a scientist in Japan who did a bunch of tests on mood energy in relation to water, and nobody has been able to replicate what he did. But so who knows if it's true. And I'm not here really to say that that is or isn't true, because it kind of doesn't matter. Water is fluid, not to be obvious about it, but water is fluid. Any structure you put into water is gone nearly instantaneously. So if you have the ironic and funny thing is, if you have a way to keep water structured, it would actually be better for your body. If it was somehow able to enter your body and remain structured as it entered your body, it would be more efficient in the work it did. And so people take that and they say, okay, I want structured water. Water doesn't stay structured. The closest thing we've been able to scientifically get to having structured water that stayed structured is eating fruit. There is some structure to the water that's in fruit. If you then eat it and you get some of that liquid in you, it actually remains mildly structured inside you for a moment. So there's been some evidence of that. But other than that, you can't have water. Even the scientists here in University of Washington who studied structured water the most of anyone that I'm aware of, he said water doesn't retain its structure when you drink it. So it's a little bit of a snake oil for some people selling that.
When you talk structured water, when it enters the body, are you talking about the molecules separating and breaking down from hydrogen and oxygen?
It's not even just that. Literally, when people talk about structured water, they're talking about the magnetic, like the layer that exists between the surface and the water, and that outside layer where it's kind of against the surface creates this tension, which creates an actual shape when you're looking at the water. It creates a shape to it versus it being random, being floating around randomly, right? So that's what it really is talking about. And it doesn't stay. Yeah, when I say it doesn't stay, it's kind of obvious if you think about it. You shake up that glass or you just tip it towards your mouth, it's not going to retain its structure. So, and then hydrogenated water, if water was able to, water that does have extra hydrogen, yeah, there's some reality there for sure. There's some health benefits to that. It is not as snakes oil salesy as structured water is. There's some genuineness to that. It's hard to get. It's really difficult. So you're not going to buy a little bottle of water thing like this big that says it hydrogenates water and then have that be as effective as the $8,000 counter machines that they're selling that really do that. So it's and then the other thing is you got to drink it within like an hour or two of creating your hydrogenated water as well. So there's some truth to that, but you can't like let it sit all day and expect it to be the same. It's not going to be. And then currently the technology is not really good enough to be able to really do much. I think they do a little bit, but really do much with those personal bottles. So not buying hydrogenated water at a store, you have to make it. You can't just buy it and expect it to actually still be hydrogenated. It's not, that wouldn't be possible.
What about carbonated water? I noticed there's a lot of this carbonated water coming onto the market. I myself see that as a destructive thing. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I'd like to know why you think it's destructive. I don't think much about carbonated water other than it being, you know, it'll have an effect on your stomach size, an actual effect on the literal size of your stomach, and that can make you hungrier for sure. Yeah. So, but other than that, I don't have much of an opinion about it. What do you think about it?
So this doesn't change or alter the pH balance of the water at all?
It will a little bit, yeah. Um, so pH balance of water is of little actual. If it's super acidic or super alkaline, it can have an effect, like extreme levels, somewhat. But your body is more powerful as far as the pH goes, more powerful than the water you drink. You will be overcoming any pH issues from water. So, carbonated water as relates to pH, I, gosh, I don't think that is actually a significant factor. Yeah. I mean, if you're adding carbonic acid, it's weak, right? But carbon dioxide reacting into carbonic acid doesn't seem like it's actually going to have that much of a significant effect.
So that will not attack your teeth at all and all of that because of the pH then.
No, I mean, minimally. If the pH is really getting that bad, then yeah, if it becomes acidic, it will definitely do that. But I don't think that it is going to create that level of an effect. I mean, it, yeah, we haven't seen that at least. So,
Yeah. Uh, I've been curious about that for quite some time because I've heard so much about soda and pop. It's being carbonated is what rots your teeth. So this is what you do is help uh, destroy the myths behind these things, and that's why I thought I'd throw that in there.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it becomes mildly acidic, but not like lemon juice, not like stomach acid. So it's like it becomes a little closer on the acidic scale, just like drops a little bit. But it's if you were drinking it constantly, I could see it having an effect on your teeth. It's kind of back to it's a dosage thing.
Yeah, we could talk for hours about water, Cydian. Is there anything that you need to get in that's very important for people to understand?
The majority of our country is on city water. So if I'd like to talk about that for a moment. The Environmental Protection Agency actually is, the one who is going to be setting the standard for health for city water, right? And they set two standards for drinking water. I don't think that I'm just trying to bash the EPA. I'm not just bashing them. They without them, we'd have a lot more dead people. That's for sure. But but they set two standards for drinking water because without it, there would be there would be no municipalities. They have to set a health standard for water, and then they have to set a legal standard, and they're not the same. So the health standard is called the MCLG, which stands for Maximum Contaminant Level Goal. The legal standard is MCL, which is Maximum Contaminant Level. The maximum contaminant level is the enforceable level. So anytime you go to a lab and you take your water in and you say to them, and this is where I want people to understand this, because they make this mistake at labs all the time. The person brings them their water and they say, "Is my water healthy?" And they give them the test to sample. And then the lab person comes back and says, "Your water's healthy. Everything's within the legal level." But that's not the health level. The health level is a different standard. So the person who's asking the question, "Is my water healthy?" They're thinking one thing when they say, "Is my water healthy?" But the lab is thinking another thing when they hear that. Most people only think about the MCL. They only think about the legal level because they assume the legal level is the health level. The legal level is not the health level. It is, and I am paraphrasing what the EPA says right on their website. It is the closest they can get to the health level, considering cost and other factors, such as infrastructure. So that means the municipalities are doing their very best to get stuff as close to the health level as they can, but they can't get all the way there. Arsenic, for example, the health level is 0. The legal level is 0.01 parts per million. So that's not the same. If you go and you're drinking like 0.005 arsenic, you're halfway to the legal level from the health level, which is 0. So there's a lot of arsenic in city water. Tons of it. Tons.
So what about all of the pharmaceuticals that people flush down their toilets? Because most cities, they repurpose the water, don't they, and refilter it and then reuse it. So do those levels keep rising?
Yeah. So here's the trick. Here's the tough thing about pharmaceuticals. They do rise, but they also fluctuate. So first of all, testing for pharmaceuticals is very difficult still. You can do it. It's costly. If you then get a positive result from a pharmaceutical in your water, you could go back a month later and it's not there. You could then find out there's no pharmaceuticals in your water 1 month, and the next month there is. If you want to be safe from pharmaceuticals, that's one of the rare situations where you just need to treat for pharmaceuticals so that you are not drinking pharmaceuticals when they appear. And luckily, I'm not going to say this is like actually a catch-all, but if you want to do a catch-all, you do a whole house system that is a high-grade catalytic carbon. And then you follow it up with an under-counter reverse osmosis for drinking water. You are pretty much guaranteed to catch just about everything. Arsenic is a maybe that could get through, as well as bromide. But you could do a third little tiny filter for those. And then you've kind of got a catch-all for everything. And that would probably cost most people around $6,000, something like that. Between 5,000 and 6,000.
And that's for the whole system, the tank plus the under the counter system.
Yeah. And the install cost for most install costs. You could, if you're installing it yourself, you could probably do it for close to 3,000. You could probably figure that out right in that range. So, I mean, it's very within reach for many people to have a kind of a catch-all system. It's still not my recommendation to do catch-all systems, but I would want to do testing. And then if you then say, I also want to make sure I'm doing pharmaceuticals, we can adjust. But yeah, if someone wanted to do that, then you're pretty close with high grade catalytic carbon, followed by an under-counter reverse osmosis, and then a nano titanium oxide post-treatment filter. All those together, that'll pretty much cover most everything.
Right on. Cydian, it's wonderful talking to you about these things, but some people may want help with this. How can they get a hold of you and get more information?
Sure. Yeah, our website is purewaternorthwest.com. My name happens to be Cydian, which means I'm really easy to I'm really easy to find on the internet. If my name was Jeff, it might be harder. So that's how if there's short questions, I answer free advice for people all the time. I actually, since I've started doing some of these podcasts, I've had people from like Tennessee call me and people from Florida call me and just say, hey, I've got a quick question. I was like, who is this? So yeah. If we can stay under 2 or 3 minutes, though, I don't mind it. And I can usually answer questions that fast. So.
All right, Cydian, I want to say thank you for joining here today and sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us about water.
All right. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
I used to drink the stories down, everything they handed out. Never asked a single question, just believed without direction. But something shifted in the light, started seeing clear and bright. Crystal clear, truth flows through lies. No more myths, no compromise. Cydian breaks the water code. Science speaks where fear once flowed. You're not at fault. You can feel it in the air, something honest, something fair. Like a window open wide, letting sunshine flood inside. No more hiding what is real. This is how liberation feels. Crystal clear, truth flows through eyes. No more myths, no compromise. Cydian breaks the water code. Science speaks where fear once flowed. Your knowledge for it. We were thirsty for so long, drinking fear, it felt so wrong. Now the truth tastes clean and true. Pour a glass, I'm sharing it with you. Crystal clear, truth flow through lies. No more myths, no compromise. Cydian breaks the water code. Science speaks where